What's going on, everybody? We are back. We got episode number 153 of the Club and Sub podcast. Tonight we're chatting UFC Vegas 80. We got Grant Dawson taking on Bobby Green, two of my favorite fighters. So that's pretty exciting. It's a good card. I'm excited to jump into it. I don't know if it's the best for betting. Obviously, we'll chat about that. Before we get into it, can I just recap last card? Lags, you said you had no bets on last card, right?
I did not have any bets, so yeah.
I had a number of
Makes
bets.
it easy.
And it was actually a pretty good card for me. Despite the fact that my biggest bet of the night, Jake Collier, who I had 4 units on and like an average of plus 130, went down. I also had a unit and a half on Tim Means plus 170. Obviously, that was a great bet. I had a unit plus 154 on Miles Johns. That also obviously went well, cashed well. I think it proved out pretty much what I thought, that he's just a much better fighter. And I'm actually going to liken it to another fight we have tonight. But we'll get into that later. I had 3 units on Bryce Mitchell, average price like minus 128. That cashed. Seemed pretty straightforward to me. I saw some complaining about 30-27 scorecards. Frankly, I thought 30-27 cards were fine. But I can see the argument the other way. It wasn't like it was a blowout at all as far as a fight goes. Obviously, it was, back and forth, but Mitchell, just had a lot more control. And then I had a unit on Mateusz Gamrot, plus 136. No idea if that was a good bet or not. Obviously, I kind of think it was, because I kind of think Fiziev was going to go downhill from there. But hard to really say. Plus 4.4 units for myself. And with that, we'll just get into this card. Lags, what are your thoughts here? Any high-level thoughts on the card before we go in, or? I can't hear you. You're muted.
Sorry, I was on mute there. I tweeted out earlier that, it's definitely not the strongest it takes. I feel like there's just a lot of 50-50 fights, to be honest. I think you could make passionate takes for a lot of these fights for both fighters. Interesting main event, like you alluded to. Bobby Green, our boy. Sad main event, though. Sad main event for him, though. We'll get to that.
I think so as well.
Yep.
But yeah, let's jump into it. First fight of the night, we got Montana De La Rosa taking on JJ Aldrich. De La Rosa minus 140, comeback on Aldrich plus 120. Pretty much everybody I know likes the De La Rosa side here. It seems like pretty much everybody. Like I haven't even really heard a take
for Aldrich
side, honestly. And I'm not going to say that's why I kind of lean to her side. I don't know. I guess I see why everyone seems to like De La Rosa. Obviously, in terms of the volume aspect of this fight, I think it is a fair assumption that, she'll compete on volume and whatnot. And then obviously she has the grappling upside here. I get all that. To me, though, I don't actually think she has that much grappling upside. I've seen people use the Na Liang fight as evidence that JJ can get taken down, but Na takes down everybody. She's incredibly strong. She's very big, and she's just incredibly aggressive. And I know Aldrich got taken down a handful of times by her, but it's not like she got dominated on the mat. She got up pretty easy every time. And, we've seen JJ Aldrich fight with a fair number of women that wanted to put her on the mat, and all of them struggled to do it. Jillian Robertson, Erin Blanchfield, the aforementioned Liang, who got out-grappled there. Obviously, she out-grappled Vanessa Demopoulos. And so I'd actually be very surprised if Montana got a lot of top time here. And on the other side, I actually wouldn't be surprised if Aldrich got a little bit of top time. She's, counter-grappled okay at times in her career. We've seen women that counter-grapple well have put Aldrich in trouble in the past. You go back to the Andrea Lee fight. Andrea Lee, she's someone who has a fairly large grappling deficiency there, and she ended up being the one who got more takedowns and more control in that fight. Now, Lee's better than Aldrich. I only say this to just point out that I just don't think there's really that big of a grappling edge here personally. And it's kind of hard, though, for me to kind of put a finger on, a line here, because both of these women have mostly beaten just complete trash, and both of them have mostly lost to upper tier fighters. And so it's very hard to figure out what's going to happen when they fight someone in the same tier, which is why I'm not betting it. My instinct is Aldrich's striking is a little sharper, and if they keep this upright, if it's mostly upright, which I think it will be, I would kind of lean that way, but I don't really have any great conviction in it. Do you have any stronger take than I do here?
No, so kind of like how I was talking about, you making great cases for both fighters. I mean, I think this is one to start off the card that you absolutely can. On the Aldrich side, I think she's the better striker here. Historically, pretty good takedown defense. And then on the De La Rosa side, historically, pretty decent wrestler. She's big, physical for the division. So it's like, I think you could make arguments for both sides, but kind of like what you alluded to with the De La Rosa grappling. I don't know how much grappling success she's going to have, but I do think she has way more finishing upside in the matchup. So
Yeah,
I understand this theme, but more often than not, I just think it's going to be a close fight. So
same. I feel like De La Rosa dog money was really good. If you got like a De La Rosa plus 115, plus 120 ticket, I feel like laying the chalk at this point is crazy to me. Like laying minus 140 in this fight in general just seems like a lot of juice to pay for a fight that's probably going to be very competitive.
Yeah. And then last thing to add for the Aldrich side too, it's not like she has dominant margins either. Like when she's actually fighting like decent caliber women.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I agree.
Tough.
Moving on, fun fight here. We got Johnny Munoz Jr. He's taking on Arichi Long. Current price minus 110 aside. Pick him. What are your thoughts here, Lags?
Again, another really interesting one because for me, I would want to just fade Munoz because I harp on his wrestling pretty much every time we talk about him. I don't think it's that great, and his striking is nothing. I mean, he can't bust a grape really, but Arichi's defensive grappling is just kind of a huge question mark, really. So I don't know. And then to add on the Munoz side, I don't think his wrestling is that great, but at least he's persistent with it. Like at least in the Manis fight, I mean, couldn't get any takedowns going, but shot a shit ton of them.
Munoz's wrestling is pretty weird to me. I don't think he is a very he does a very good job of timing takedowns, of changing levels quickly and just timing it at the perfect time to get in on the hips. What I don't like is it seems like from there, he just doesn't have a whole lot of drive through those takedowns. Once he gets there, it's kind of like,
he's not very physical.
That's my point. Yeah. So he gets in a perfect position where a bit of drive, guys would just keel over from how deep he gets. But he just doesn't do a very good job finishing those takedowns. And I don't know. It's a weird fight because I do think if Johnny Munoz Jr. gets on top of Arichi Long here, it's probably going to be not very good for him. Johnny Munoz Jr.'s jiu-jitsu is very, very, very legit. But on the other side, I do think Arichi Long's takedown defense is pretty good. And I think getting up from guard, he's pretty good at getting up and not giving his back. And so I could see him stuffing takedowns here a lot and lighting up Munoz on the feet because I think Munoz's striking is just appalling. Obviously, look, his 2 UFC wins are both against. Jay Parent, or he didn't beat Jay Parent. Never mind. I don't know why I even said
Ludovic.
that. Ludovic Jilinian is pretty terrible, and Jamie Simmons is terrible, and they're both out of the UFC. So I don't even know how much stock to put in that, but I will say, I know his jiu-jitsu is legit. And I guess for me, I was leaning toward the Arichi Long side, but the size difference here is pretty big. Arichi Long used to being the bigger guy down at flyweight, even in his first couple fights at bantamweight, he looked bigger than Jay Perrin last fight. Johnny Munoz Jr. is not a small guy. He's going to be 2 inches taller. I think he's a bit thicker than Arichi Long is. And that kind of scares me because I think even if he doesn't have some initial success getting inside on him and getting him down, you might see him be able to just kind of muscle Arichi Long a bit in the clinch and just kind of hold him there against the fence, get a lot of cage push, maybe work a takedown or something off of that. But it's not enough for me to be tempted by the Munoz side. If anything, it will be the Arichi Long side. For me, watching Munoz's last fight with Daniel Santos, just a terrible look. The guy kept pulling guard and going body triangle from bottom. And I mentioned this on Clinch Show Monday, but how mad are you if you're holding a favorite Munoz ticket and he pulls guard and you just watch the entire fight with Arichi Long's hands inside, not really, just kind of happy to consolidate the position and win a comfortable decision. Will that happen? I don't really know. I can see the angle for both sides. Arichi's my lean, but I don't feel strong about it. Moving on, though, we got Kanako Marada. She's taking on Vanessa Demopoulos. Current number on Marada, minus 325. Come back on Demopoulos, plus 275. I bet Marada pretty big at an early price here. I still think there's a fair amount of value, honestly, even at minus 325. I struggle to see where Vanessa Demopoulos really competes in this fight. I guess, there's always a possibility she could land an armbar or whatever. And I know, obviously, Marada broke her arm in an armbar attempt in her last fight. But I don't actually think Demopoulos' jiu-jitsu is that good. Even from bottom, it's fairly easy to see coming. Jandiroba is an absolute shark on the mat. And you saw Marada, for the most part, while Jandiroba was attacking that armbar, do the right things. She just got her arm caught a bit deep there, and she didn't tap out. And Jandiroba just a lot bigger and a lot more physical than Demopoulos is. And so I look at this. Dude, I mean, Kanako Marada absolutely mauled Renda Marcos. She grappled Emily Ducati for 5 rounds. This woman's beaten some real fighters and beaten them dominantly, whereas Vanessa Demopoulos has pretty much just pounded low-level trash, and even some of that, like her winning at Shinyu Fry, somewhat questionable. I just, unless Marada loses her mind and just decides to bang on the feet here, I really, really struggle to see Demopoulos really competing in this fight, because I think she gets her down very, very easily, and I think when she gets there, she's going to bring a world of hurt to her. She throws legit ground and pound. She's positionally sound. I think Demopoulos is like meme finish or bust, to be honest. I think this is Marada all day. What do you think?
Yeah, not much to add from my side. I think Marada, the wrestling advantage is enough to where, this price is more than justified, really.
Yeah, agreed.
If she keeps it standing, it's obviously going to be much closer, but there's no reason to think that she should.
Even that, though, Demopoulos is.
She's
got some pop.
Close. It's low volume. I think,
but that's what I'm saying. Demopoulos is a terrible striker. Know. But yeah,
terrible wrestler.
Yeah, she's just not very good. Honestly, I give her credit for kind of making the most of the tools she has. Yeah, I would not have thought, if you told me 2.5 years ago when she debuted, that she was going to start 3-3 or 3-2 in the UFC, whatever she started. I would have been like, there's no way. But she is dangerous, and she has made the most of those tools. I just think she's getting brick walled pretty hard here, in my opinion. Moving on, though. A battle of 2 bantamweights fighting at flyweight. We got Nate Munoz taking on Mateus Mendonca. Mendonca minus 258, comeback on Munoz plus 218. What are your thoughts here, Legs?
Well, elephant in the room, obviously. Munoz fighting at 125. He looked like horrible last time out. So tough to really get to him ever at 125. Mendonca on the feet, he's pretty raw, but he'll come forward, hits pretty hard, decent wrestling upside too. I just think in general he's pretty raw. So laying a massive number like this against a somewhat proven guy in Munoz, I have no interest. I think the line's more than fine, like pretty accurate.
Yeah, I really want to bet Munoz, honestly, but to your point,
okay.
The 125 thing is scaring the shit out of me.
Yeah.
He looked like one of the Nosferatu, when you saw this guy on the scales. Like he was, because Mendonca.
I think the Megamind pick was the best.
But that's he looked horrible. And Mendonca's a 35er, but he is a thick 35er, but he's 5'6", like plausibly I can see that. Munoz is 5'10", and when he's in the octagon at 35, he looks like a giant, like he looks like a featherweight at bantamweight, and he's going down there. I'd have a little bit more enthusiasm about betting Munoz if he had, had he had to have any standing exchanges in that fight with Tagir, and we got to see what does his durability look like down there. Because if his durability is all the same, then yeah, if Munoz came in completely uncompromised, fighting the exact same way at 125 as 135, I don't think I'd make this worse than pick him. I don't think Mendonca is a good wrestler. I think him getting Munoz down is going to be very tough. You look at Johnny Munoz and Tony Gravely went like 3 for 22 combined and takedown attempts against Munoz. He's just not an easy guy to take down. He's big. He does a decent job fighting for underhooks along the fence. The only guys to really maul this guy on the mat are Tagir, who's a monster, and Umar, who's also a monster. And on the feet, Mendonca is dynamic, but Munoz hits hard as well. Neither is high volume at all. I actually kind of think standing, it's probably going to be kind of a low tempo kickboxing match. That's going to be, both have enough danger and firepower to hurt or finish the other. But I think until that happens, it's going to be kind of point fighty. If you watch both of them, neither of them are really guys who are going to really just go off volume wise. And so I kind of feel like it's a pick'em fight that I would lean Munoz in when you consider, the experience and just level of competition Munoz has fought versus what Mendonca's fought, plus just the giant frame on Munoz. But I mean, 125, it's such a huge variable, what do we, it's hard to scale for it, right? Because it could mean nothing, and the fight's exactly what I thought it was before I went to tape when I thought it was a 135, or it could mean Munoz is completely compromised. One shot, he's just got any hard shot, he's going to be melting on. We don't really know. I feel, I mean,
I would say to cut in real quick there, I think there's two aspects to that. One, and what you alluded to already, the fight that we saw at 125, we didn't really see a ton of striking exchanges. So to try to extrapolate that to this fight, tough. And then secondly, I mean, even if we saw a little bit of striking exchanges at 125 there, I mean, who's to say, maybe it doesn't, maybe it looks better now, like fight to fight, it always changes, different fighters, even if they're fighting at the same weight class.
Maybe I'm wrong, but I seem to recall him saying he was never doing 125 again after that fight. I could be wrong about that, but I either way, I feel like you have to predict some kind of decline off peak form at 125. Like maybe it doesn't happen, but I feel if you're capping it, you do. My question, I guess, is we should probably expect the same from Mendonca, right? Like some sort of regression down at 125 as well.
See, that's another thing that's tough too, because you don't know.
It's very, very strange. I lean the Munoz side. I don't know if I'm going to get there with the bet just because it really freaks me out that he's fighting at this weight class. So, but we'll see. Moving on though, Karolina Kowalkiewicz taking on Diana Belbita. Current line, Karolina is a favorite. She's minus 163. Comeback on Belbita plus 143. This is a weird fight. I got to say, I am not a Diana Belbita fan at all. And I have been a Karolina fan in a couple of her most recent fights just because, Karolina went from fighting such a high level of competition and having very poor results to going from the highest level of competition at 115 to pretty much the lowest level of competition she could be fighting. Yeah. Demopoulos, Juarez.
You bet that a bit.
Herring.
You bet her a pick 'em there. So
yeah, exactly. So, I mean, it made sense to me that she was winning fights down there. And I think in the context of this fight, she's still fighting a very low level of competition. I don't really see much from Diana Belbita that I like. I think Karolina is a better striker. I think she's got better volume. I think she's the better grappler in all likelihood. Because Belbita, she's physical, but she's very easy to hit. Sometimes can be low volume. Not much of a grappler. And yet, with all of that said, I kind of lean to the Belbita side. I got to say, Karolina is 37 years old. At some point, she's going to go over a cliff. It seemed like she was doing it already prior to moving, down to this level of competition. Belbita, by contrast, is 27 and seems to be training hard. I feel like we should expect improvements there. Belbita is 4 inches taller and 4 inches longer. And she's a woman who will scrap. And Karolina, by the way, is also a woman who will scrap. She's not going to sit back and point fight either. And I think Belbita has a pretty decent horsepower advantage in terms of everything she throws, punches, kicks, and whatever. And so it's kind of weird. And I don't think I'm going to bet it because of that, because I feel pretty convinced that Karolina is the better fighter here. But at the same time, there's a lot of physical intangibles and macro factors pertaining to age that favor Belbita pretty heavily in this fight and would make me very uncomfortable holding a Karolina favorite ticket. My pick's Karolina, but what do you think?
So this brings a lot of parallels, I feel like, to the De La Rosa fight for me, just because I would say Karolina is the only girl that's going to have grappling success of the two. I differ from you in the Aldrich fight. I think De La Rosa is the only one that's going to have grappling success there. But here, I think Karolina is the only one going to have grappling success. But I do think this fight largely plays out pretty close, even if she is the much better fighter. So more often than not. So it's like, mine's probably fine because Belbita's going 50-50 against really low-level competition. It's a pretty big step up. So
yeah, agreed.
I think line's fine.
Moving on, cool fight here for as long as it lasts. We got Ion Cutelaba taking on Felipe Lynch. Cutelaba currently minus 150. The comeback on Lynch plus 130. What are your thoughts, Lex?
Again, another one I feel like you could make decent arguments for both because Lynn's pretty slow. He's already, 38, 39 years old. He's getting up there in age. And Cutelaba's that kind of guy that could just go in there, spark him early. could totally see that. But it's like the only fight where Kutalaba has had success outside of round 1 is the Devin Clark fight. So laying juice on Kutalaba in that kind of scenario, it's tough. So like I get why people would want to fade Kutalaba, live bet Lins, but this fight's just a pass. I have no interest.
Yeah, I'm not betting it, but I have like somewhat similar feelings. I'm pretty convinced that Kutalaba is the better fighter. He's obviously the much better wrestler of the two. I think if one of them were to get substantial amounts of top time in this fight, it would almost certainly be Kutalaba. Even on the feet, Lynch is a better boxer, but I mean, Kutalaba throws heat and he will come for you. And I don't really think Lynch really likes heavy exchanges in the pocket that much. Obviously, you have the durability concerns with Lynch and the gas out concerns on the Kutalaba side, both of which I think the Kutalaba one is more predictive than the Lynch one. Like Lynch, a lot
Agreed.
of the times he got KO'd came earlier in his career, right? Versus Kutalaba, where it's like, it's been pretty predictive throughout his career.
Right.
But with that said, something I was thinking about a Lynch bet, and then I looked and saw, dude, he's 38 years old, man. I didn't even realize that. And Kutalaba's only 29. He's training in the States, Factory X now. I would expect, and he has looked a bit better lately. Again, granted, his fights aren't going very long, but I would expect Kutalaba to continue to get better, whereas I'd expect there to be a decline from Lynch sometime in the near future. I don't know. I mean, my gut feeling is that Kutalaba is going to run through him here early and finish him.
Real quick, John. You're doing Kutalaba.
Isn't that how you pronounce it?
Kutalaba.
Are you sure? Because I pronounced it. I swear John Adams says
I'm almost positive it's Eon Kutalaba.
Well, that's how it's spelled phonetically.
I'm pretty sure that's how it's said. I'm almost positive that's how I've heard it said. That's why I've heard you say it like 4 times, and I'm like, I'm pretty sure you're saying that right.
I'm telling you that's how John Anik pronounces it. I could be wrong.
Out Saturday night.
He could be wrong.
Questions will be answered.
Questions will be answered. But yeah, I mean, my instinct is he runs through him. But
yeah,
am I really surprised if Lynch survives the storm and finishes him? No. Am I surprised if Lynch knocks him out early? No. But I also feel like on the other side of that, there's a decent amount of equity for Lynch gassing as well, and not having the guys that finished him. He kind of tripped into a guillotine against Spann. He just got out grappled by Walker, and Kennedy is just a cardio bully, and that's what he did. He did Kennedy things. So I don't know. I'm kind of on the fence here. I lean the Kutalaba side. I think he is going to I think he is going to win this fight. Whether the line is right or not, I'm not really sure. But to your point, yes, the Clark fight's the only time we've seen him top time for 15 minutes. But, of the two, he's the one who's actually shown an ability to process grapple for 15, and he's 10 years younger. So I lean Kutalaba. I was
going to say, last thing Kutalaba's fight IQ is just, I think, one of the worst, man.
Horrendous.
It really is. So
But also, Lynch has fought like nobody in recent years. Like Grishin's his best win by a country mile.
That's not bad though.
No, Grishin's not bad. That is a good win. Grishin's solid. But Prochnow is bad, and St. Preux is washed. And
the Prochnow fight look good because the gas tank just did not.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah. So we'll see. Yep. I don't really want to get in front of this fight at all. I can't bet. I'm pretty much in a not betting Eon ever mindset at this point in his career. Like I'm looking to fade him. I would bet Lynch if anything, but I just have this feeling that Kutalaba is gonna run through him. But we'll see.
Speaking of another fight, I don't know if I want to step in front of.
We got Bill Algeo, Senior Perfecto, Philly's own. He's taking on Alexander the Great Ape Hernandez. Current pricing has Algeo up as a slight to moderate favorite. He's minus 160. Come back on Hernandez plus 140. Lags, you want to go first?
Yeah, sure. I'll be pretty brief with it though. Obviously, elephant in the room. I think a lot of people try to compare Bill Algeo, the same fighter, but I think to break it down simply, they don't fight in the same pressure. Billy Q is in your face, massive pressure, massive volume, and Bill just doesn't fight like that. So, and nor does he have any finishing power, really, in my opinion. Doesn't really hurt a lot of guys. I think Alex wins round 1 at a high clip here. I think he could knock Bill out. He's got big power on the feet, pretty physical. I think he can take Bill down pretty much at will. I just hate that this fight's at 145. Not even like the cardio narratives and the quit nature, this and that. I don't think Bill's that kind of guy to drive it out of him. I just hate the fact that it's at 145 instead of 155. But if the price keeps going up, I will definitely take a small shot on Alex.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you regarding the 145 thing. That's why I only have a unit on Alexander Hernandez, and I got a bad line. I bet him a plus 125, and it's up to plus 140 now, and I will not be adding to it. I'll say this, and I think I mentioned this in our last podcast, but I understand why people like Bill Algeo here. I do, but every single person who is looking at this fight or into MMA is thinking the same thing regarding the cardio dynamic in this fight.
I forget which fight we were talking about, but yes, you mentioned this.
But you can't have really an edge on something if the biggest part of that fight is the crux of an analysis about that fight. And I say this because it's like a crypto phenomenon called sell the news. When a rumor comes around that something's going to happen, price shoots up, and then when the news happens, price drops. Why does price drop? Because the news had already been priced into it, so there was nowhere to go but down from it. And that's kind of how I think about this. Like, Hernandez's cardio and history of gassing out, it's well established. And so you're not getting an edge against his cardio here. So my question when going into tape here was, well, is there anything potentially being missed here? Or is it just like that straightforward? Hernandez will do well early and then gas out and get finished. And my view on that is, first of all, the only two really bad gas outs Hernandez has had in his career were against Dober and Quarantillo. To your point, Bill Algeo will keep a high pace for sure, but he doesn't do the kind of body attritional work that Quarantillo does. Not nowhere close
or
to
Dober.
It. Does,
yep.
And Dober is a different level than even the other two. And the Dober fight, he did fine early, but Dober just kept coming, pressuring him, working the body, and just landing absolute bombs. Same thing with Quarantillo. He just kept coming until he broke. The other fights where he's been finished, he got finished by Cowboy. That was still when Cowboy was pretty good. And I mean, he just fought a guy that was better than him and got wrecked. Like that's just what happens, The Moicano fight, he looked fine. He fought Moicano, arguably won the first round. It was a very close first round. He looked fine early in the second. He got dropped and Moicano jumped on his back and subbed him. That's not really a collapse. He just got hurt and got finished. And so we really only have a 2-fight sample of him completely death gassing and just kind of giving up. And it was against absolute pressure monsters who were just throwing insane attritional shit at him. Bill keeps a high pace, but that's not really his game, is that kind of pressure and attritional work. He throws a lot of leg kicks, but he doesn't kick legs hard. Like, Bill's never really hurt anybody to the legs. That's not really his thing. He's not a guy who's going to sit there like Billy Quarantillo in the clinch and, even though he's eating a ton of damage, fire off 50 body shots in a row on you. That's just not him. He's going to sit back and he's going to strike with him in all likelihood. He might try to wrestle him, but he's not the better wrestler here. Like, not even close. People forget, but Alexander Hernandez once upon a time out-wrestled OAM to a 3-round decision. Like that happened. Won all 3 rounds grappling with Olivier Aubin-Mercier, which is aged pretty well. So I think they're mostly going to strike. I will say, I think if he does start to tire, there's definitely the possibility he'll initiate the grappling, which I personally think will not go very well for him. Like, I think he can take down Bill at will, but I just sort of have this suspicion if he takes Bill down, it's going to end up in a scramble with Bill on his back or in a front headlock position. That just seems to be what happens to everybody that tries to grapple Bill. But I mean, on the feet, yeah, I expect Bill to land more volume, but he's lost multiple decisions in his career where he's outlanded his opponents by 25 plus strikes. I mean, that's a pretty indicative of a guy who's not great at winning minutes on the feet, despite the volume that he lands. And I mean, there's just going to be a massive, massive difference in firepower between the two. Let's be honest. Hernandez is a pretty big hitter. Bill is not. If anybody's going to get an early KO, I would say it's more likely not to be Hernandez. I don't expect him to get a KO, to be clear, but I think his shots are going to be visibly landing with more damage. And so I think this fight could just play out a lot at range and them just striking with Hernandez landing bigger shots. Maybe Bill will go Terminator mode and try to break him here. But if he doesn't, I'm not sure. I agree with you. And it's why I'm only on it for a unit. Like, 145 could just mean he doesn't have the cardio to go. It's really hard to say. I mean, again, it's like his first fight at 145 was against the biggest cardio Terminator in the sport's history. So it's like, I can't even put that much like stock in the fight, but I don't know. I mean, we'll see. I just have this feeling that Hernandez's cardio is being probably overstated, the issues he has. And I could be wrong about that. And it turns out it's exactly on point and he just gets run down the stretch here. But I mean his last
go ahead. I was
gonna say his last fight, he literally, I mean, he landed 100 significant strikes in 3 rounds last fight and attempted 95 strikes in round 3. For someone with this F-level cardio, you don't usually see guys with F-level cardio landing 50-plus significant strikes in 3rd rounds. And yet he did that 1 fight ago.
It was Jim Miller, yeah. It was Jim Miller.
But the point I'm making
I know. Jim Miller's just not a guy with great cardio, but I understand.
No, I know.
The only thing I was going to add was even if Bill does try like that Terminator type approach that Billy Q does, I mean, we even just saw Billy Q just pay for it most recently. Edson Barbosa knocked him out.
Yeah.
I mean, Bill doesn't have good striking defense.
No, and guys like that eventually get clapped. I mean, it happens at some point. I don't know if Hernandez will be the guy to do that to him. I don't even know if Hernandez will win. It's a close fight, in my opinion. Like I'm not saying Alex Hernandez big favorite. I'm saying I think it should be close to a pick'em here.
Right, and if you're laying the massive juice on Bill, you're basically predicating it on a collapse for Alex.
And I think that's my point.
Because if this goes 15, I don't see how you're having any edge.
Right. Well, yeah. If it goes 15, do you feel very good about holding an Algeo ticket over 15 minutes here? I wouldn't, and I just feel like even if like we'll be able to see what the pace is like live, right? So I have a unit on him. If this pace does end up being very, very high in round 1, it is not. Pepe is right. It is not massive juice. He's at minus 160 at the moment. But
okay, sorry.
I guess my view is like if it is a very high pace, there might be an opportunity to bail on Hernandez live after a round. Maybe there won't be, but I am inclined to think that Hernandez is going to pinball his head a fair amount in the first round of this fight. But we'll see. We'll see. I lean the Hernandez side.
I think it's a pretty big athlete gap too.
For sure. So. That's not even a question. But we'll see. Again, I made an impassioned case for it just because I feel like, it's just such a consensus narrative about his cardio. Right. And I think it's going to be overstated. But, I'm not saying go bet 2, 3, 4 units on.
Right. It's just one of those fights that people think they have strong takes just because they thought this fight before, but it's like.
Yeah, I think
really,
it's
not really. Yeah. Yep. Agreed.
So we'll see. But moving on, we got Drew Dober. He's taking on Ricky Glenn. Drew Dober is giga chalk here. This is massive.
He is massively chalked. Yes. He is. Yes.
We got minus 425 on Drew Dober. The comeback on Rick Glenn plus 325. And yeah, I mean, I think Dober should win, like obviously, but also I've got this like weird feeling with Dober that the chin might be starting to go a bit. Not because Frivola knocked him out. Obviously, Frivola is a decent hitter, but he's been hurt a couple times recently. Bobby rocked him a couple times. Brad Riddell rocked him on the feet. I don't know, man. A guy who fights in the style that Drew Dober fights like, when the chin starts to go, it's going to get ugly, and he's going to take a couple losses no one expected him to take. I don't know if we're there yet, but, he is open to be hit. And on the other side, Rick Glenn, it's like a guy who's also known for being durable throughout his career, got KO'd for the first time in his last fight. I sort of feel like that's influencing the line a bit, even though, Christos Giagos, he's a gas bag, but Christos Giagos in round 1 is a mythical creature. He's dangerous. He hits hard. He's very, very fast. I'm not sure how predictive it is. I don't think, with that said, I'm not saying I think Glenn's going to KO Dober, but Glenn is huge. And I just have a feeling this could be a bit more competitive than the line. The one thing I actually am kind of thinking of targeting here, and it keeps moving up, I don't know if I'll do it or not, but the over 2.5 is plus 190. And as I just mentioned, Rick Glenn wasn't KO'd until his last fight. That was the first time he was KO'd in his career. Drew Dober, known for being durable. I am worried that maybe his durability is slipping a bit, but I'm almost inclined. Like if Glenn didn't get KO'd by Giagos, what's the over 2.5? Minus 110? Probably.
I'd say the under would probably be like minus 130, minus 135. I would still think the under would be shaded.
Yeah, fair enough. I guess what I'm saying is just I think probably more credit is being assigned to that than is due just
Oh, for
because
sure.
of how visceral it was. And we see this stuff all the time where guys get KO and they bounce back and they're fine. I don't know if I'll do it. I'm monitoring it, but I am kind of tempted to take the contrarian angle here and go on over. What do you think?
So to add real quick there to your over contrarian, the over 1.5 is -110.
What is it?
The over
Minus
1.5 -110.
I almost feel like if they get over though, they're gonna get all the way,
That's fair because if you're probably avoiding the early KO, or if I should say if you're avoiding any the KO is probably
Right.
early,
You're still facing the early
Yes.
KO.
Right, agreed. But yeah, no doubt that last fight with Yagos is influencing this line. I mean, Dober, massive, massive favorite. I wouldn't expect to be this wide. I would think, maybe in the 300s. But I mean, I just think he's much faster, much more athletic, much more stinging power. I think he knocks Glenn out. It's just obviously, 4-1, 5-1 favorite getting knocked out how he did in his last fight. It's a little unsettling.
Yeah, I agree. I completely agree.
There's not much to add. I feel like, I feel like
Moving
if anything on
on.
this fight, you're you're fading the Dober KO. No.
Yeah, I mean that's pretty much it.
Yep.
Or even Dober decision would be kind of interesting because it's probably like plus 300.
I think it was plus 350 on DraftKings when I looked.
Yeah, I mean that's. Let's see. Bet Online has it at plus 325. I actually don't think that's bad, honestly. Although we might get to a better decision line here in a second. We got Joaquin Buckley. He's taking on Alex Morono. Current price on Buckley minus 175. Comeback Morono plus 150. What are your thoughts here, Legs?
So I talked to you about this a little bit before we started the pod, but I was actually looking to bet Buckley when the number was coming down under minus 150. It's obviously trending towards the other way, but I mean, on the feet, I just think hits much harder. Again, much more of an athlete. Obviously, that's not saying much. Morono's pretty much a bag of milk on the feet or in general. But I don't see a ton of wrestling upside from Morono. I think if anybody's going to have wrestling upside, it's going to be Buckley. Buckley hits much harder on the feet. Yeah, I like Buckley here.
I've gone back and forth on this fight all week, to be quite honest with you. Because I love betting Alex Morono because I feel like, to your point, he is a bag of milk, and because of that, the guy's been perpetually undervalued by the market throughout his career. Fair. He does a lot of good things, He keeps a high pace, good cardio, decent jiu-jitsu. Plus, he's just mostly fought better guys and is way more experienced than Buckley is, which are things.
But what I will add real quick there, John, he might have fought in better guys, but name me an athlete he's fought in recently.
No, I agree. Chaos, who murdered him. No, I believe
an older Ponzinibbio who ended up murdering him, but
that's kind of where I was going with it. Like Morono checks a lot of boxes for me in this spot, but at the same time, Buckley's an athlete, just a different level of athlete than what Morono is here. He's probably got a bit of wrestling upside, though. I'd be surprised if Buckley could really control Morono on the mat much, to be honest. But he's faster. He hits harder. I'm a little worried about. I don't think I want to say Morono's declining durability, but I'm not sure he ever had great durability. We've just seen the guy gets hurt a lot. He does, and against a guy who's a nuclear hitter like Buckley, that's kind of scary. Plus, I don't think it's going to be as easy against. Buckley's interesting because he minimizes exchanges tremendously well. The guy you don't really see Buckley get into heavy, all-out exchanges very often in his fights. He tends to just kind of skirt the outside, bounce in and out, come in, throw a 2 or 3 strike combo and get back out. And I kind of think that kind of guy could give Morono problems. Like you saw, I bet Morono against Semmelsberger. But that's partially because Semmelsberger was like a plotter and it was very easy for Morono to kind of stand on the outside, do his thing, get volume off. Buckley is not a plotter, and he covers distance very, very quickly. I think Morono is going to have a very, very tough time dictating this fight in the space that he wants it to be. And with Buckley's style, you really need to be able to counter decently well to handle him, and I don't think Morono is really capable of doing that at an effective level here. So, yeah, I mean, my gut was Morono, but like the more I think about it, the more I lean to the Buckley side. Plus, it seems like everybody's betting Morono this week. It really has the feeling of it feels like a square dog. That's what it feels like. Everyone's betting him, and meanwhile, the line ping pong back towards Buckley. That's not usually a great sign. And what I was going to say though, and shout out to Pepe who's in the chat. He pointed this out earlier in the week, but Buckley decision is a fairly interesting price to me because, as I mentioned, Buckley does tend to limit exchanges. You're not going to get, I'm seeing plus 450s and plus 550s out there on it. You're not going to have Buckley come out here and throw 250 significant strikes and land 150. That's not the kind of way, that's just not how Buckley fights. He's going to be in and out, land a bit and get out. And so I think that's an interesting way to target it, because if you think Buckley's going to consistently land harder, and if you also think Morono is live, which many people do, then to me, Buckley decision seems like a logical outcome there. Because, look, if Morono is live, it's probably a competitive fight, because I just can't see Morono putting out enough volume to offset Buckley's power and be more than a close decision. So, yeah, I mean, I think the GTD and the Buckley decision are both kind of interesting. Sweaty, but interesting bets.
Oh, and to answer Pepe's question, he has beaten a black before, Max Griffin.
He has beaten a black man. Max Griffin, that is right. He did.
He has.
He did. He did beat Max Griffin.
Yes.
Moving on, though. Speaking of, we got Joe Pyfer taking on Abdul Razak Alhassan. Joe Pyfer, Joe Pyfer, minus 450. Comeback on Alhassan, plus 350. I bet Razak.
John wants to do it. Oh, he did it.
I bet Razak. I'm like, I have a unit on him, and I'm sitting here like, should I have like 2 to 3 units on him? Because I really, dude, let me hear me out. I really feel like I bet GM3 against Pyfer, right, in his last fight. Yep, and obviously Pyfer nuked him pretty early in that fight. But I feel like we didn't learn anything new about Pyfer. GM3 was landing on him pretty easily before he got knocked out, for as short as that fight lasted. Pyfer's just come out here off a contend. He fought a bum on contenders in Ozzy Diaz. He fought Alan Amandovsky, who's one of the worst to ever do it. Insta-killed him. And then he insta-killed GM3. Great. And let's be honest, GM3 is my guy, but GM3 gets hurt early in every fight. He's always going to go through the fire before he comes out the other side. And a lot of times he doesn't come out the other side, It's sometimes
John has made a lot of charitable donations to the Mir Shark Foundation.
Yeah, but the win against Marada paid for it all. So
that's
we'll
true.
always have
that's
that.
True. Yes, that's true.
But I guess my point is, when you go back and look at the tape of Pyfer, obviously the guy hits hard. He's obviously well muscled, powerful, explosive, but he has very bad defense. You can see that in almost every one of his fights. He's very, very easy to hit on the feet. He's a decent grappler, but I don't think, even though he trains with some of those guys out of Philly, I don't think his grappling is anywhere near the level of like a Sabatini or any of the other guys training down there. Most guys he's tried to grapple hard can generally work back up. And on the Razak side, I feel like if he goes for takedowns against Razak, he'll get them, but Razak's tough to hold down. Buckley couldn't hold him down. You go way back, Razak fought Omari Akhmedov when Omari was at his peak, and that was a competitive fight. Omari couldn't really hold him down throughout that fight either. He got 6 takedowns, but only got 5 minutes of control across that fight. And so I don't really think like a Joe Pyfer 10-minute top clinic is really in play here. And I think if he does try to do that, there's some risk of him doing what Buckley did and just deteriorating his own gas tank. But if that doesn't happen, I mean, these guys are they're gonna bang. Obviously Pyfer can KO Razak, but I'm not sure I've seen anything from Pyfer's tape to suggest he's an elite durability guy. He may be. I haven't seen anything to say he's not, but we really haven't seen him in there with anybody like the kind of power in their hands that Alhassan has. Alhassan's a good striker, especially if you get in the pocket with him and mix it up like Pyfer will. And so I guess my view is, yeah, maybe favor Pyfer because there is grappling upside there. Well, not maybe. I would favor Pyfer because there is grappling upside there.
Yeah.
But I expect the fight to mostly be a shootout here. And if it's a shootout, I don't really think you can put Pyfer past like 65% top as his ceiling. Like if he's bombing away with a guy like Alhassan, Pyfer's hittable. It's there in the tape. The man is very, very hittable. And so I think these two guys are going to bite down and throw a lot. And with that being the case, now you're giving me a plus 350 ticket on Razak. I got to take that. I've thought about adding to it. I don't know. I don't know what I'll probably won't, but I think Razak is clearly the side here. What do you think, Lags?
KO1 is plus 700.
Yeah, but I mean, plus 350
I
at that point.
I know, John. You're not that kind of guy anyways.
I would.
No, to chase the props. No, to chase the props. No, to chase the props if the money line's like that, which I agree with you. But to your point here, This one's tough just because I don't really know what to make of Razak's durability because he only got knocked out that one time against Chaos, which was kind of just, flush shot real early, which, I mean, could happen here.
He looked fine against Buckley.
I know. So that's interesting. But yeah, no, I mean, I do think it's largely a shootout, but he does have that wrestling upside. But I think fight Pyfer in like that 75%. I think that seems fine.
All right.
We'll see.
Fair enough. He's telling me to go fuck myself, I guess.
No, I'm
moving
not.
on.
I'm definitely not. But what I will say though is, to add on to the Dober point when we were talking about, the last fight, inducing, I should say, affecting the line. I feel like just the Pyfer narrative in general, like the Joe Pyfer, this and that, like all the hype around him, -500.
But that's what I'm saying. You want to fade the hype, right? I mean, in general, like there's definitely a certain amount of hype being priced into the line that wouldn't be there if it was someone with the exact attributes of Joe Pyfer who had like 10 UFC fights and was 6-4, That's my point. I don't mind the Pyfer sub shot though. That's pretty interesting.
All right.
Moving on though, main event of the evening. Grant KGD Dawson. He is chalked up as well. He's -425. Comeback on Bobby Green +325. What are your thoughts here, Lags?
I think Dawson ITD is probably accurately priced, but I feel like that's probably the only way you could look to play this fight. And it's -135, -140 in spots. Yeah, I think Grant can get takedowns pretty easy, can control Bobby. I don't know. I think Bobby just kind of seems like on the decline lately, to be honest. Not much more to add, really.
Yeah, I think Grant's going to chew him up and spit him out, to be honest. And I love Bobby.
We love Bobby.
Yeah, he's favorite of the pod. He's like probably one of my favorite fighters ever. But the truth is, and I don't want to say this and be like, oh, Grant is Islam, but like Bobby Green had a fortunate run of not fighting many good grapplers. And you look at the one time he fought an elite grappler in Makhachev, and he just got absolutely mugged in that fight, just a complete non-compete. He's done a good job historically of working up against worse grapplers. But Dawson's a different level, man. Like he's not Makhachev, but he's maybe the next tier down. I mean, he's an animal. He's one of the best back takers in the sport. Super heavy on top, super dangerous submission game, dangerous ground and pound. I look at it and yeah, it's a 5-round fight. We saw Dawson gas against Glenn. So I think there is some credence for Bobby surviving long enough for Grant to gas and then maybe putting it on him and stopping him late. Like, to me, that's kind of how I would see Bobby winning this fight. But to your point, I do think Bobby's looked declined. He obviously won the Tony Ferguson fight solidly, but I thought he looked declined in that fight, honestly. He looked slower to me. He looked a little bit more stiff than he's ever really looked before. And he's 37 years old. And now he's fighting an absolute animal in Grant Dawson who, he's at ATT now. He's 29. He's really hitting his prime, and you've been able to see it in his fights. His physicality's gotten better. His wrestling's gotten better. The dude's, he's honestly maybe the best offensive grappler from top position in the sport right now. And I'm not even kidding when I say that. Like, I think he's, if not the best, he is one of like the best 2 or 3. And so, yeah, Bobby likes to give his back to get up, but you really can't do that with Grant. My suspicion here, I actually think the money line of -135 is decent, or not the money line, the inside.
ITD.
Yeah, the minus that would slam that. But I actually might play that because I do think that's pretty decent. And I also, I feel like people are gonna like late props here. I kind of like early ITD props for Dawson. I think he could, if he gets on top of Green early in round 1 and early in round 2, I think he's going to smash him. Bobby's okay defending himself, but he doesn't defend subs like a guy like Ismagulov does. I think this is Grant all day. I like the ITD. I don't like sub because it's like a +130. Grant throws enough ground and pound that he could get a stop there. But I think round 1 +300, round 2 +500 are interesting shots, to be quite honest. Yeah, I like Grant. I like Grant ITD. But yeah, that'll do it for the show, guys. Quick one. We'll be back next week, same time. Also a decent card. We're all just getting prepped for, the big Russian card that isn't in Russia in Abu Dhabi in a couple weeks, the afternoon pay-per-view. But yeah, hope you like the show tonight, guys. If you got a bunch of bets, good luck on them. Hope you guys win some money. We'll be back next week, same time, 7 p.m. Eastern. Drop a like, subscribe. We'd really appreciate it. Good night, everybody. Peace.